I don't print upsides. So that would be the session before the break. At the break, I have to rush out and move a car. That's right. Why are we in this room, and why am I involved? I'll say a bit more about that, of course, when I give a talk later on. But I see two routes through which people like me have become involved in this kind of dialogue. One is that I made the great mistake of writing a little book called The Music of Life, and I was looking to give some expression in our culture to ideas that I wanted to explain in relation to the role of the nervous system and the concept of the self. And it seemed natural to me, when writing the book, that I should acknowledge the no-self concept in Buddhism. And that's what led me in turn to use one of the major parables, the ox-herder parable, which is in the last chapter of the book. So in a very curious way, a textbook of physiology has turned out to interest people way outside the field of physiology. So much so that when the Dalai Lama visited Oxford to debate with people here in the Sheldonian Theatre, another event, incidentally, that was a complete sellout. I think the tickets for that went within 2 or 3 days, if I remember rightly. I was asked whether I would, as it were, engage him in dialogue. I'll say a little bit more about that. It was a suitably embarrassing occasion in which I had to look around and smile at the audience when I was thrown a koan which I couldn't answer. But I doubt whether anybody in this room can answer it, so we'll come to that later on. It also got me involved in addressing a meeting of about 3,000 monks in Bangkok. I don't think a physiologist can claim to have done that ever before, so we will see. So, I've been in discussion with the new Professor of Buddhist Studies here in Oxford, Vesna Wallace, one of the co-organisers of this meeting, together with Alan Wallace. And particularly so because, as you'll see when she takes over from me in a minute or so to give her opening presentation, one of her great interests is in science in Buddhism. And we thought that it would be a good idea, therefore, to follow up on those discussions with a meeting of this nature. And we chose this room for 2 reasons. The first was that we imagined we could have a small table in the middle of the room with about 20 people around, talking in depth about the problems of the self, of relativity, and so on. Well, you know what's happened to that particular idea. But the other reason is this. It's the gentleman over there, who is Charles Sherrington. This is called the Sherrington Room because he was, of course, the Professor of Physiology here for many years after having worked in Cambridge and in Liverpool. He was a Nobel laureate for his work on the nervous system. He wrote a famous book called The Integrative Action of the Nervous System. But he also wrote a book called Man on His Nature. And it has to be, I think, with perhaps the exception of some ramblings by Jack Eccles, also a Nobel Prize-winning neuroscientist, it happens to have some of the last statements, I think, by a physiologist, a neuroscientist adopting a fully Cartesian position in relation to the concept of the self. And I can see some of the philosophers here already smiling at that fact. But it's true. If you read Man on His Nature, or if you read the later books of people like Jack Eccles, you'll find that they were completely trapped, if you like, to call it, inside that idea. Now, I mention that not to poke fun at a distinguished neuroscientist. That's certainly not my point. My point is this. The science that man did is phenomenal. Absolutely everything to do with neuroscience today can be derived from what Charles Sherrington did. But that did not prevent him, and many of other neuroscientists of that period, from adopting a philosophical position, accepting it as it were automatically, that we would now all regard as absurd. And that tells us something. It tells us something that analysing these kinds of questions, the way in which we talk about biology, the nervous system, the physics of the world, which we will come on to later on when Laurent Natal addresses us, it's interesting to see how science itself often falls into the kinds of traps that our language holds in store for us, or that our culture holds in store for us. And I'm sure that as we debate in this meeting, we'll revisit those issues to an increasing extent. What I'm going to do during the presentations and the discussion is to make notes on some of the issues that should come up in the in-depth discussion tomorrow morning, which Peter Hacker will lead after having absorbed some of what people say today, whether sense or nonsense,